Welcome back, everyone, to another Pulse training session in the Guardian Alliance. Today, we are focused on the healer archetype. And as you can see, I've immersed myself in this healing environment for today in order for us to bring through the transmission of the nature of nature and the power of environments in healing ourselves and our relationships. As we go into the journey of life, we discover that there are places and spaces where we feel deeply nourished, deeply aligned with who we are, where we are called forth to be the essence of our true selves. And there are other places and spaces where we find we're not in resonance with the environment. And when the resonance with the environment is off, what we experience is a subtle state of discomfort or pain, or a lack of belonging. And when we feel this lack of belonging, it challenges us to adapt ourselves, to change ourselves, to become something different. And so it is not necessarily that being in an environment that is highly resonant with you is always the better thing, or that it's good or rather bad to be in an environment which is not in resonance with who you are. Because in the long run and the journey of life, we can't qualify these things as simply as good or bad, light or dark. There is simply ease and challenge. And it can be very challenging to spend a lot of our time in a space that is deeply, or rather not in deep resonance with who we are. And so there's a balance point that we must come to find. There's a dance that we make between the spaces, the people, and the places, the fields that challenge us and cause us through disharmony to grow and adapt and change, and being in the spaces and the places and with the people that we find ease and grace and comfort with things exactly the way that they are, or the way that we are. And the line of growth and evolution, as well as the line of acknowledging the self and going through healing processes, has to pulse between both. Because when we are in states and spaces that are constantly in resonance with us, and we constantly feel this state of support, we often don't have an opportunity to dive in and address some of the things that are going on underneath the surface inside of us that may still, as of yet, be unresolved issues from our life, from our previous lives. And even when we're in these spaces, for example, when you go on vacation and you're at an exquisite, amazing, beautiful beach, and you're exploring this amazing space in nature, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad to be here. If you haven't processed through some of the things that are going on for you in your life, some of the deeper issues and challenges, then even when you're in this highly resonant space, you're going to feel like there's something holding you back from being there. You're going to feel like you're not able to be fully present. Whereas if you go into a space like New York City and you've got all this stuff going on and all this traffic going on and all of these things going on, and again, you haven't dealt with all of your stuff, it's probably going to be smacking you right in the face. And you're going to have to be like, oh my God, I've got to deal with this stuff. My life is completely disheveled. I need to pull things together. I got to pull myself together. I got to face these challenges. Go! And you have this pressure to do it. Whereas in the beach, you have this kind of lingering dissatisfaction that's based in that field of not facing whatever challenge it is that's coming up for you in your life. So this is the dance. It's between a space of conductivity for support and nurturance, what we would call the yin field of environmental healing, and the yang field, which is challenge, direction, movement, growth, of environmental healing. And so we can leverage the experience of our environments to get enough of each of these polarities to ensure that we're both growing at the rate that we want to grow, and we're both nurturing ourselves at the level and scale that we need to nurture ourselves at the same time. So here's how it works. If you are in a space in your life where you've got a specific issue you're trying to solve, let's say that that particular issue and challenge, which is common for many people, is financial. You're having trouble manifesting the finances that you need, and you are experiencing a repeated effect of being disappointed in yourself, feeling ashamed, trying to talk to your family or your friends. You have experiences where you get embarrassed because you're out to dinner with friends and people are spending money openly and you feel like you can't spend that money. All of these little emotional and mental triggers are all connected to this part of you that is still in some way not opening itself to allow the abundance to flow through your life to the extent that you want to, and also maybe has this relationship where when you are in a lot of flow and then you're not in a lot of flow, you find yourself having all these emotional and mental reflective experiences that are painful in the time after that. And for a lot of people, you don't really know, okay, where does this come from? Where am I getting this from? And if you scan back far enough, you might notice things like, oh yeah, like my mom used to always say, like, oh, we don't have enough money for that. We can't have enough money for that. Or your dad was always like, oh, that's way too expensive. These things, we can't afford that kind of stuff. Or things are always so tight, or there's, dang it, we never have enough money to do all the things we need to do. You have all of these programs, which as a child, you just absorbed. You just took them in, you just received them. It's your parents. You trust your parents, right? So your parents are giving you these cues about how money works and how things are. And you basically take those on, and that becomes part of your program. Now, in the context of healing, we can look at almost anything that is a painful issue or a painful pattern, not just finances. In this case, I'm using a simple example that many people can relate to. But if you have consistent back pain, if you have consistent relationship issues, if you have consistent issues, addressing and facing, something personal in your life, some physiological issue or illness that you have that you're really struggling with. Almost all of these things are based in the same kind of structure, which is a belief pattern and consciousness pattern that we took on at some point in our lives before now. So when we were a child, or as a young adult, or in some cases, possibly even before you incarnated into this life. And those patterns and belief systems, they form a resonant structure inside of our bodies. So there's an architecture to that belief system that is in our minds. If we look at it metaphysically, we see that the architecture is an astral architecture. It's actually contained in our energy field. This is why people that are highly energetically sensitive or psychic can often see this energetic architecture of a belief system or of an illness that's going on inside of our bodies. Now, that geometric architecture is also full of vibration and resonance, right? So it's made of light, and that light has a certain kind of vibrational resonance. And the structure of the energy field is guiding how that vibration is moving through us or not moving through us. So the structure may be containing that field in a certain part of your body. It may be blocking it from flowing into other areas. It may be blocking input of energy from other areas of your body or other aspects of your mental field. It may be compartmentalized in a certain part of your psyche, so that you don't think about it and you don't look at it until you're faced with a situation that forces you to look at it. And so we create these different containers and fill them up with vibration, which creates these little pockets, little sanskaric, as they would say in Hinduism, which is basically a vortex, a small vortex of energy that is caught in like a knot. And that knot is in your energy field, and it is literally drawing your field and your being in space-time towards other things in your life that are resonant with that vortex. So what that means is that when you've got a belief system that's really strong, you've got one of these sanskaric knots based on a trauma, based on an intense belief system, whatever it is, you often then will literally be drawing yourself and or the universe around you to things that are in resonance with that trauma and with that pain. So it will continue trying to show itself to you so that you can become conscious of it. Now, this is where environments come in. Because when you're in a different environment, your environment allows you to experience a resonance that is either in, as I said before, high resonant alignment with you or not high disresonance with you, right? And each environment has a quality to the vibrational field in it, based on the sounds that are around us, the life that is growing around us, the flowers, the weather, all of the things that are a part of our environment are composing a symphony. And that symphony that's playing music into our bodies, that's communicating to the field that we are immersed in, is meeting a song that we are playing on the inside. Now, when we have deep wounds and pain and places that are needing healing in our bodies, it's like we have a song that we're playing, but there's this one instrument in the song that's out of key and it's playing really rough notes, right? So generally our song might be pretty good, but then there's this really grimy, and everything else like, and you're like, and you feel this like, there's always this little thing, and then you turn down the right? So you turn that way down, so it's just like real in the background, so that you're mostly on the like, dun 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 dun, and you go into an environment, and that environment is playing along with your da 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 da, and you're like, oh, okay, this feels really good. This is really good. And as you're bringing up all the song and all that sound, that part of you that's like, it's just so background. It's like it doesn't even matter, right? Yet there's still sometimes a little nagging feeling. There's still something that's like, it's like there's a little mosquito flying around there, there's like this little bug that's like, and you're like, no. I'm in the da 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 da, like, stop, go away. and if you really sit in it though, and you really are fully dedicated to entering this full space of the symphony and the song, and making the merger happen, making the place where you match the environment, you're uplifting yourself to meet that high field, then you're naturally going to notice that there is a sound that's not resonant with it, and you're going to want to start bringing it up. And you're going to be in enough of a space of your own high resonance that you have an opportunity to look at it from a really high power place. So leveraging really nurturing and really supportive environments to actually bring up and notice the parts of you that are in disharmony, and start to meditate on those while you're in the space of that feels really good and that feels really high, can sort of lubricate the process of you bringing that into dun 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 to jun 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 jun, and you're like starting to bring it into the harmony because you're reflecting on it and you're feeling how it's not matching everything else, and you're starting to see why it's not matching everything else and where that song came from and why that tune is being played and what is it really about and where does that pain come from. And you also perhaps then also have a safe place to hopefully open up and release the emotional field that's been all caught up inside of that architecture, and allow that emotion to stream forth and stream out, which then takes away all the charge that's in the architecture, so that you can then break down the architecture and replace that old belief system with a new system, right? That's going to be good. And then your song is going to generally be in more alignment. So now let's look at the other scenario, okay? Let's look at what happens when you go in to deal with this in an environment that's in disharmony. Now, oftentimes, you know, you got your you know, that's going on, and that's playing in there somewhere. And you go into an environment that's like, and it's raw, right? You're like in, you know, I'll keep picking on New York while we're at it. And you're like in the like intense grungy part of New York. There's trash blowing around, you know, there's just this like really gritty field, you know, there's some guys like who are like on the street and they're just like feeling really rough and kind of gangsta and kind of like scouting shit out, you know, and you've got this like oppressive police field presence, you know, that's coming around and flowing through. You've got all this traffic, like, you know, and you got all these taxis trying to push around each other. And you got all these business people coming out of buildings that are stressed out, you know. And let's say it's a bad day in New York, which a bad day in New York is a pretty significant, you know, thing in certain parts of New York. And so it's like it's like the field is intense, and you know, you go into that field and maybe you enter that field and you're in a state where you're feeling excited and you're feeling really good, you know, and you're feeling really down. And then all of a sudden you get in that field, and that field is directly playing the song of that place in you that's got all that, right? And maybe, you know, if it's the financial issue we're talking about, maybe you're feeling all of these people's stress around money that's going on. They're all, I mean, New York is a major money pipeline. So you're either like riding it and just floating on a massive, like step by step, like, you know, rolling pile of abundance that you're rocking it at, or you're like working for it, struggling for it, and like making the shit and getting it, you know, making it happen for you. And there's a lot of people that, you know, have like fight hard to have some money to live and to do the things they need to do in New York. And there's a lot of people in New York that have so much money, they don't know what to do with it. They just spend it and blow it on giant parties and, you know, $20 glasses of champagne on rooftops and hanging out with their friends and showing off their big, you know, suite or whatever. Not to say that's bad, and not to say that the struggle for money is bad either, but that, you know, there is a massive, you know, spectrum going on in that field. And maybe the people that are struggling, the people that are really going through it, that have a similar belief resonance as you do, you know, is what you're being exposed to while you're in that field and you've arrived. So what's happening is your crunch is getting like mixed with and built up by and harmonized with the field around you. So out of nowhere, when you were feeling really good and really excited, you start feeling worried about how much the taxi costs, about how much the lunch costs, about how much the dinner costs. You start feeling all the scarcity and all of the belief systems around scarcity start to come up for you. And it starts overwhelming. It starts making you feel stressed, and you start kind of holding tighter to everything you have. And it's literally bringing up the resonance of that wound for you. And this is an opportunity. It's a beautiful opportunity, but it's one that few people grasp, because usually we get pushed by the rising of our shadow to a point where we freak out, we melt down, we break down, and sometimes that process of breakdown is the process that our being is giving us to have a transformation and to make it okay. But we don't always consciously enter that breakdown process. And so sometimes by the end of it, we've just flushed a lot of emotion, but we haven't really changed the architecture. So we've allowed some of that resonance that's built up inside of us around the belief system to flow out of us, probably affecting our friends, who are listening to us, and probably, embarrassing us or sometimes, or whatever. We've let it all out, but we haven't consciously looked at the architecture that caused the buildup of all that resonance in the first place. And so if we can go develop the capacity where, as our shadow is being resonated, as we start having this experience and we start getting stressed, we start noticing that this stuff is coming up for us, and we can take a moment long enough, like sit in the heart space long enough to go, okay, what's really going on here? Like, am I really feeling lack? Like, am I lacking? I mean, here I am, I'm in New York, I'm exploring, there's so many amazing things to do. So, and it doesn't require money, I can just walk around. Like, there's a way through this. Like, what is it? Where is this pain coming from? Where is this fear coming from? Where is this resonance coming from that is creating this feeling of suffering for me right now? And what is this trigger emerging from? And if we can ask that question and just notice it, just allow that as it's coming up, we're noticing the trigger, we're noticing the painful place, and we use our body to open, to feel the conduit, to feel where it is. And we work with it. We breathe in that spot as we're walking around. When we have to pay the food at dinner, we're like, okay, I'm feeling tightness around that spot. Where is that at? And then what happens is, spontaneously, because the field has been resonating this part of our shadow up, and we're watching it and we're conscious of it, we begin to actually naturally receive the information needed to transmute that shadow. We can actually ride the rising of it and feel it coming up for us, hold it in compassion, hold it in space, breathe it, and move it through our bodies, and start to encode it with the higher knowledge inside of us that breaks down the architecture, releases the charge, and allows us to shift and to create a new mental framework around that belief system. And what will happen is that our environments actually change, and vibrationally, we attract the spaces, the things, the people that are in alignment with what's going on in our own transmutation process. The amount of support that we have from the universe around us just by choosing to heal our being is amazing. So when you have a shadow arising and you're choosing to acknowledge the shadow, you're choosing to see it, you're choosing to breathe through it, you're choosing to notice, where is this coming from? You're asking the questions, and you're looking at what would be the way that I could feel about this that is in higher harmony with who I am. What is the way that I can acknowledge the fact that my parents had a struggle with money, and that all these people are having struggle with money, and acknowledge that that's a painful thing for people, and recognize that you are in this moment in an experience of abundance. because you're abundantly recognizing yourself, your own energy, your own life, your own ability to manifest. You're also abundantly recognizing that you're in an environment that's transforming you. You're recognizing that you got there somehow, that you have family, that you have friends, that you have a universe that supports you. You begin looking at the field of abundance that is actually cultivating this transformation inside of you. And as you're riding that field of transformation, you're riding that abundance, you begin to then change the environment around you. So suddenly the people that are feeling more abundant and more aligned show up in your field. Those friends that you have in New York or whatever, they come to dinner with you and they offer to pay for your dinner. You walk out on the street and you go to get a car and it shows up right away. And it ends up being a massive discount, on the Uber, because there's nobody else that is, calling cars right now. And you start to actually experience that the universe is supporting your experience of feeling abundant. And this only becomes possible, this shift in the rhythm and in the symphony only becomes possible when you recognize that you're playing along with the environment, right? When you are saying, okay, this is playing along with my so it's like, and you're like, oh God, this is intense. And you're like, oh yeah, what is that I'm feeling? Okay, can I, oh, all right, I see. Okay, oh yeah, okay, there's a lack of abundance going on. Okay, oh, I'm feeling that myself. Oh, I don't have enough. Okay, but do I have enough? Really, do I have enough? Like, what is this? Am I enough? Is this enough? Is it enough that I'm here? Is it enough that I have friends? It is enough that I'm in New York. And you start, to that. You start bringing in this. Da, 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 da. And you're like asking this question, bringing in this higher harmony, and all of a sudden the starts sounding more beautiful. And then there's a transition point where literally that hard drum and bass of change and transformation, as you're feeling it deeper and deeper, it breaks and it opens up. And suddenly there's this like new space where the disharmonies are in play with the harmonies. And it's like that moment, in a great song where it's like, oh, oh, da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na. And you start bringing in this higher harmony, and suddenly then it's like something is starting to shift. And then when you go back into action, it's like, and so even though the same intensity, the same rhythm, the same like hard beat and flow is still all around you, you're still in New York, you still maybe feel some of that pain and some of that resonance there. You now are meeting that resonance with this heart field in yourself that's choosing to transform and transmute it inside your body and all around you. And the environment and everything else starts to play along with that song. And this quality of being shifted by an environment to become aware of your shadow and then shifting yourself in order to transform who you are, then shifts the environment that you're in and leaves ripples in that environment for others to pick up on the same keys. And this is the actual superhero work of the Jedi healer, going in to face your own shadow, to face your own darkness, and to begin to transform the world around you and be a healer for people around you simply by healing yourself. simply by acknowledging the shadows in you and choosing to move through them, breathe through them, and grow inside of yourself. And once that's done, once you've had a process like this, and you go through some big shifts, you know, and you move through the challenging environment, and you've upgraded it a bit, you've shifted in yourself, you've come into a space of a little higher resonance. Sometimes what happens, and by the way, sometimes when you do this shift and this is going on for you, it literally becomes, the song becomes so intense and so high that then suddenly you step into the new architecture. And as you enter that new architecture, you're just like, oh my God, I am so abundant, or I am so healthy, or, oh yes, I'm so strong, or my knees feel so good, or, you know, whatever it is that's going on in your body. That's part of this healing and this transformation process, whatever this belief system is. You start feeling so good that you're like super high, and you end up having this like amazing journey, and it's like synchronicities everywhere, and there's connections everywhere, and there's like all these things that happen, and you're getting the full upgrade, right? You're getting the upgrade of this new level of yourself, you know, that's transcendent of where you were before. And oftentimes afterwards, what happens is we tend to go back to our normal environment. And when we go back into our normal life and our normal home, our normal environments, we now are bringing ourselves from this more powerful space. But it's very, very easy to just go right back in to the same vibrational dynamic and structural energy that we left. And the thing is that, you know, oftentimes we reflect on and we look at like, okay, like I'm feeling different, I'm being different, but I still have to do the things that I normally do in my life. So I'm just going to keep going with those things. And I'm sure that my life will just shift around me based on the fact that I'm now in this new place. But what we haven't realized is we haven't brought that shift to our environment yet. So just like we were in New York, you know, like pumping it up and like doing the breathing and doing the energy work and breathing through the new self and seeing the manifestation around us, when you're in your house, the things inside your house are not going to just change position unless you move them, right? So when you get home and you're back in your home, you need to look at your home and be like, okay, how is in this space, how are the things in this space either reflecting the fact that I'm powerful, that I'm abundant, that I'm healthy, that I'm feeling good, that I'm sexually potent, like whatever it is that is a place that is the challenge for you. Does this space reflect that empowerment? And really look at it. Think about the symbolisms, you know, that you have around. You know, do you have pennies that just you never picked up, that are just like laying in corners and just like on the floor in places? If you can't, as a friend of mine once said, if you can't honor the smallest token of wealth, how can you honor the largest? So pick up those pennies, put them in a jar, put them in a spot that you can put more pennies in, and grow some seed of wealth. And look at it as wealth, even if it's only a little bit of money. Look at it as value. You can actually turn that into a meal. You can turn that into a gift for somebody. You can turn that into something, right? So you're looking at its value. You know, do you feel like when you go into your bedroom that it feels like maybe your decoration is old, it represents an old version of you, and maybe it reminds you of your grandma, or maybe it and it's something that doesn't activate your sensuality, and you've been feeling really blocked in your sensuality. Well, maybe you need to change up the decor to activate something that feels more aligned with you. If you've got like an illness going on where, you know, you're having consistent trouble, like say with your throat, right? And you have repeated issues like with your throat, and you get scratchy throat, and you get like coughs and things like this, and this happens to you a lot in wintertime or whatever, you know, and you think, well, it's just because the environment's doing it to me. Well, yes, sure, the environment is contributing to that. And in your space, you probably have things that are in a way representative of that. For example, do you have cards and letters or notes from people that you care about that are laying around that you've been thinking about how much you want to write them back and say thank you? Or business cards, you've been meaning to write them and tell them how much you appreciate them, but you haven't. And so you've got this desire, you've got this will to do this thing, but you haven't done it yet. And you have the thing just sitting around, you know, building up charge. And every time you look at it, you're like, oh gosh, I really should do that soon, right? Like I really should do that. And then you're kind of like, man, I can't believe I haven't done that yet. I'll get to it. And every time you do that, you're building up this kind of feedback loop with yourself that's creating an architecture of lack of trust in your own ability to follow through, of, you know, uncertainty about, you know, the thing. It's also usually creating a mess on your desk or whatever. And so these things, although they're very, very subtle, these are very, very subtle things. You know, it's not like the end of the world, right? But the little subtle things will, over time, start to build up. And those things that start to build up, you know, do eventually have an effect. And when we are going through a big upgrade process, it's really important that we take account for the little things, because sometimes changing a few of those little triggers and a few of the little things can have massive beneficial effects for us over a little bit of time. And that just means like, all right, just dropping everything, sitting down and writing back those people. It means just like, you know, just pull off the blankets or the old decor and just try putting a different blanket in there, you know, just for the day, and see how it feels. You know, just doing something to just shake it up and shift it up. And if you are someone who creates altars or that has like sacred spaces around, you know, really take a look at it and consider, is this the highest reflection of who you are right now? Is there a way that you can improve this? Is there some way that this would feel better and more aligned with who you are? Is it possible to make this thing more powerful? Has this just gotten dusty? Or, you know, whatever it is, like, is there a way for you to shift this reflection of your connection and prayer with the universe about yourself? And to take a minute and upgrade that, and to make your environment and bring it into greater alignment with you and who you are. So that process that I'm talking about, from experiencing or noticing something that needs to be healed to entering a transformation process, either through an intense environment that's going to bring up your shadow and invite you to make a shift, quite forcefully sometimes, or being in a nurturing and deeply potentized environment that's aligning with everything that's light in you, that creates a beautiful, safe container for you to do your own digging and pull up stuff and work on those healing spaces, to the integration back at home and the shifting of what's going on in your home and around your personal environment and life to try to align it to the new state that you're entering. And there's also one kind of final piece, which is that if you went through the process of facing the shadow in a space that was very, very challenging, like the New York story I was talking about, then after you're doing integration at home and while you're doing integration at home, take some time to put yourself in the most nurturing environments you can that sing the symphony of who you are to you. That means you just came out of all that craziness. You're doing some shifting at home, but the home is, there's always work to do at home. Like it's nothing that ever stops. It's always evolving. Take some time to go to that waterfall. Take some time to get out into nature, or go sit by that tree outside that you like, or go to the spaces and the places that feel really good and really nurturing for you, so that you can reinforce the beautiful song that's playing inside of you. Now, also in opposition to this, and in direct, contrast coming from the other side, if you are in this beautiful space, you're in Hawaii, and you've just like, oh yes, I've just totally integrated the next level of my shadow into my being, and you've done some deep digging and shifting, and you've just been in bliss and in the ocean and just like being in the flow of nature, and she's like been just nurturing you like crazy, right? And you get home and you're like, all right, gonna integrate this, gonna upgrade this, gonna bring some of this into my new field, etc. It's also really good to, whatever that shadow was, whatever that place was that's painful, whatever that thing is that's challenging inside of you, think about who else in your life has that challenge. Think about what other environments in your life really challenge that shadowy place for you. Like if the thing is social, if the issue is social, for example, and you've just been blocked in communicating who you are, or feeling like you could share who you are with your friends, and you come back from Hawaii and you are fixing up your space and changing your space and stuff, it's really important that at that point you say, okay, I'm now going to go to a club and I'm going to meet at least 5 people. I'm going to start conversations with 5 people. I'm going to overcome this block. So you got all the yin support, all the yin nurturing, all of the ways of bringing up the trigger from that yin, beautiful, nurtured space. And now you're going to go to the space that's got the resonance with your dun, 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 dun. And you're going to bring that energy that you just cultivated in that yin space to that challenge, and face that challenge and engage it with the state that you're in now, the new state that you're in now. And I used to call this hardening, right? And now I don't think that's necessarily the right word. The idea is that, when you're doing us making a sword in a forge, you've melted down the iron, you're now shaping it into form, and it's hot, and you can bang it into place so much and kind of get it into shape, but then you need to dunk it in the cold water, and it's going to go shh, and that cold water is going to harden the steel. It's going to literally, shove off all of the extra kind of funky surface material that's had all of the banging and all of the structural reformation, and it's going to basically condense the molecules really quickly inside the metal and harden the metal. But a better word for this is crystallizing. So what you're really doing is you've energetically, in this deeply yin nurturing space, you've brought up this field that is in harmony with the symphony of the environment. And as that's happened, you've surfaced this painful song inside of you. And you've gently opened it like a flower. And you've looked at it, and you've heard its pain, and you've heard its song, and you've seen where it came from. And you've started to love that spot, and you've started to nurture that spot, and you've cared for it enough so that it starts to release its gift. The shadow starts to become the gift that's inside of it. and you realize why this has been a part of your life, and you've started to integrate that why and what is the transformation that this is creating in your life into your field, and you started to bring it out into your astral field, and you've started to bring the emotional resonance of the pain into the pleasure of the transformational experience. And now your field is starting to literally gestate this, and you go home and it's like, oh, my home's not quite in alignment with this new field, and it's wobbly. So you're like trying to kind of get your home a little bit more dialed in. You're doing some crystallizing of this new state. And then what you're doing is you're like, okay, I have confidence in this state. I believe in this new state in myself. And now I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something that then says to my field and to myself, yes, I have made the shift. I am in a new state, and I'm choosing to participate in my life from this new state. If it's abundance, then you're like, I'm going to take my wife or my friends out to dinner, and I'm going to buy them dinner. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to be really, really vigilant that as I do that, I don't at any moment feel like I don't basically dive into the mental program of I don't have enough, or oh my gosh, I spent too much, or whatever. I'm just going to be like, I'm giving this gift, and by giving this gift, I am truly giving myself to the universe and showing the universe that I'm choosing to be more abundant. And you're vigilantly holding that space from the new field. And yes, you might have that little emotional trigger come up. You might have that like, oh God, I don't know, it's going to be too expensive, or it's, oh, you're afraid or whatever. And you're just, okay, it's all right. I've got this. I've got this. You got this. You know, you're breathing it, you're feeling it, and you're choosing to enter that yang space of overcoming it and entering the new state and crystallizing that new state as who you are. So if you've got the upgrade through doing the hard yang, go, drum and bass, then make sure you get the yin balance of that and nurture the integration and crystallization of that field. And if you have gone into your upgrade and your healing process through a yin space, then take that wisdom and challenge yourself. Go into the yang space to challenge yourself and crystallize those changes in your being. And this is a way that we can really deeply leverage the power of our environments and utilize the fact that the space-time field around us and our friends around us and the people around us, all of this is here to support us. All of this is here to nurture us in our soul's journey. There's nothing else. There is absolutely like no harmful intent in the universe ever. There's only the power of your own evolutionary journey, your own soul's journey to support yourself. And the more you engage that support and that desire within your being and within the universe around you to see you experience yourself in the highest and best state you possibly can, then the more you'll follow the trail to that. And when the times are really hard and they're really bringing up your shadow stuff, that you're able to engage with those challenges from a conscious place and consciously go through those challenges, those gauntlets, with dedication to being who you truly are, to coming through the other side, and to being stronger and to being smarter and wiser and more integrated with the feeling of who you are and who you really want to be in this world.